Hello, everyone. Welcome to. We are here live with mental health and healing, and we're going to wait and see how many people we get on here first. Hopefully, people just start popping on here real soon. Um, but today we're going to talk about mental health, not mental health and healing, but managing anger for positive change and the importance of recognizing when the anger is within you and triggered by you or triggered by those who are around you, recognizing the cues of others as well. Also, what we will be looking at is understanding that we all have known and unknown triggers, right? We do. We know what upsets us, and we just sometimes we are just there, right? 0 to 60, and
Right.
there we are, right? But then
hmm
there are times when we're in a situation and we think that we're okay, and then all of a sudden, there we go, right? So we're going to talk about what that looks like. Um, the point of mental health and healing is that I want you to walk away with more tools in your toolbox to help you through hard times and trauma that you might feel. And especially what's going on in the world today, when all the dust and the dirt settles, I want you to be able to say, I got this. And I remember that I have this in my toolbox and I can reach back out to that person or I can reach within myself and I'm able to do this. So tonight's conversation is going to be held with Mr. Floyd Sanders. He is the founders of Pace Family Services. And I'm going to go ahead and give this to Mr. Sanders. Go ahead there, sir.
Hey, thank you, Nicole. I am so blessed and thankful to be here and have this awesome opportunity to talk about how anger can be used as a force to change, transform, transmute ideas, situations, circumstance, relationships, whatever it is that you are managing, wrestling, or dealing with. My background, I graduated from UC Davis with a degree in history and in philosophy. And for the past 25 years, I've worked in the individual and family services industry, providing life skills, parenting, anger management coaching. I am the owner of Pace Family Services located in Fair Oaks, California. And I am the adult success story of overcoming childhood trauma and turning that anger around into a catalyst for changing situations in my life, making better the hand that was dealt to me. Anger can be used in that way when we understand what it is, how it's triggered, and where it comes from. Thank you very much, Nicole. Glad to be here.
Oh, thank you for being here with me this evening. We have
Mhm.
been reeling about this conversation for a little bit over like 3 weeks right now. And so I am excited that we are finally bringing this to our
Yes,
community. So,
yes.
one of the first things that I want to look at is many times when we get upset, we want to say, I'm upset because you, right?
Mm-hmm. So
But
okay, go ahead.
no, you're
Evaluation.
fine. Yes, we want to
Uh-huh.
say, I'm upset because you are the reason that I'm upset. But tell me about the need to self evaluate or self reflect because that's important in this process too, right?
It is. It's so in that phrase, I'm upset because of, well, we recognize that right there in that moment, the circumstance, the dynamic. There's something going on that has you riled up, that has you irritated, that has your feathers ruffled, and our instinctive response is to direct it outward because we are trained and conditioned to think that others, if they change or if they make an adjustment, everything goes away and everything is okay. But that self-evaluation piece that has to do with taking that moment and instead of putting the expectation on someone else, I'm going to look within because right there in that moment, there's more information available to me about what's happening that that other person is not going to reveal to you. But in that moment, if you look within, you can get a revelation about what's really going on. And that's major, middle, and minor things. Self-evaluation is the beginning. And that's a huge piece in of itself because it's mental, it's emotional, it's behavioral, it's physical.
Okay. So does there need to be a bit of flexibility when we're dealing with these situations and self-evaluations? Meaning like we can be in this situation where we're like rigid on I'm not going to do this. But isn't there a requirement that we be flexible and say, you know what, maybe, just maybe, like I have to look within because it can't always be the outside, even though it is.
Yeah. So you're right. So let's show respect to our initial perception. Our initial perception is someone is doing something to me. Something is happening to me that I don't like. Maybe I don't understand it. I certainly want it to stop, and I'll be glad when it's done and over and goes away, right? And so I'm honoring that perception because that's really just how it begins. But when we just stay right there, we really turn power over, the power for change over, and we equip that situation, that circumstance, that other person with the control, And so they have control. We've turned over to them the levers to our anger. We've turned over to them control of the situation. And we've given up the ability to make that transformation personal and meaningful. So self-evaluation is really just looking at the little details. What is your gut telling you? Let's start on one level. What's my gut telling me? What's my intuition telling me about what's happening? And in some relationships, the other person might say to you, well, your instincts are off. Your intuition, you're not seeing things right. Right? Sometimes they might even say, well, no, I'm speaking the truth, and what you are perceiving and feeling within is completely wrong. Now, granted, there might be moments when that may be true, but here's the thing: it's not about whether it's true or not. It's about what is this moment of maybe minor irritation? What is it telling me? What is it saying to me? Because that tiny moment, yes.
Now, shouldn't we look at also that if we're in a situation, and because you just honestly, you just made me think when you said we're giving control of the situation to the other person, right?
Mm-hmm.
There might have been some situations trauma based that may have like triggered that action to just be like, okay, here you go. And I'm just
Mm-hmm.
going like, you said that I can't deal. I may know why, and I may not know why, because it might remind me of this, or, it just
Mm-hmm.
is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
How do we pull out of that? How does a person pull out of that? How does a person
Mm-hmm.
recognize that that's what's going on, that they're turning over that control and they're becoming angry? How do they positively change within to not do that anymore?
So if you think about that phrase self-evaluation, the core of the word evaluation is valuate. And valuate means to deem, to determine the worth of something, the how much it matters and means. What's its transactionality? So I'm determining my worth, or I'm allowing someone else to determine my worth. How much I esteem myself, and how much I equate myself in the relationship in relation to another person. So my first thing is to assess the cost, assess the intrinsic value. What do I bring in this moment? So I'm thinking in myself, what is my contribution here? Not just my fault, but what is my contribution here? What is my meaningfulness here? And so I think if we go within and really starting to deal with the emotional aspect of it, it has to begin with determining how much I mean to myself and what I mean to this other person. And you'll know what you mean to the other person by how they entreat you, by how they respond to you, by how they handle you, meaning your mind and your emotions and your thoughts. You know, how much do they look at you and say, you know, I respect you, I esteem you. Now, all that's communicated through their mannerism,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't just stop there. I have to know what my worth is first. So, in that sense, I know how I should be treated.
And
I
so,
know how I should be responded to.
if you understand your self-worth, you have a better key and handle on controlling how you react, rather positive or negative, going towards
Right.
anger, or being able to say, you know what, I know my worth. I'm going to walk away from this situation. I'm not going to be angry. I refuse to get angry because I know who I am. So it comes
Yep.
down to that, right? Okay. So
Yes.
one of the things that we need to really look at also is that recognizing another person's cues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me
Mm-hmm.
about that.
So this is that part. It springboards off of the valuation. So I'm gonna segue into that to the Q part by kind of cut coming bringing to a closure this piece. Valuation is a business term, and it's when a bank or some investor looks at an entity and determines its intrinsic worth in the community, in the home, and what it brings. And then it future values that business entity. It looks forward and says, how much worth is this going to gain over time? In that same sense, I'm looking at my relationship or the situation I'm in, and I'm future valuing the worth that I'm bringing and that this is bringing to me. Okay? So, a part of that piece of recognizing future value, present value, and future value has to do with paying attention to the other person's cues, because a piece of that has to do with recognizing, am I in danger, or do I pose a danger to this other person? And the first step, look at the cues. Now, cues range from physical cues to behavioral cues to emotional cues and cognitive cues. So there are basically, let me see if I'm getting this in the camera. Okay, there we go. There are four types of cues, right? There are four types of cues that we have to be mindful of. Now, a physical cue has to do with what does that person's face change color? So this is one, if you master this one, you can glean a lot of information. Physical cues comes down to their heart rate, their blood pressure. It has to do with things like their body temperature. What that tells you, how do you know if a person's heart rate and blood pressure has changed? Look at the change in color. Look at, do the blood vessels in their eyes get heavier and thicker? And so if you're a dark skinned person, it's kind of difficult to look at the change in skin tone. But if you can see those ears, cuts, the ears tend to be light. See if those ears change color. Sometimes people heat up and they start to perspire a little bit. So what those physical cues tell you when you're looking at a person is that there's a whole lot going on up here. And usually when we have hostile thinking, that means aggressive thoughts and imaginations. That means we start to tighten up on the inside. And whenever we tighten up, the heart rate also speeds up. So that increases the blood pressure. So you can look at things, those kinds of physical cues. Now you might not be able to feel someone's heart rate or detect their blood pressure, but if you pay attention to just subtle things like their eyes, getting in real close, or look them right in the eyes. See if the pupils dilate and change. See if the blood vessels change and get thicker. Those are important things that we should pay attention to, but we ignore. On a personal level, if you feel your heart rate skip a beat, if you feel your body temperature going up a little bit, if your thoughts start racing, getting jumbled together and confused, and that context is conflict, then that is the first indication to you that either fear or anger has been sparked. And that, whenever we're trying to resolve a discussion and reach a peaceful agreement or compromise, anger and irritation is not state of mind that you want to be in. So
Correct.
that means when you notice that physical cue, That's your first sign to stop. Take a breath and relax.
Okay. So I want to go here.
Hmm. Uh-huh.
What do you
Okay.
think about
All
that?
right. Anger doesn't equal bad. Well, so historically, we're all taught that people who are angry are people who are not in control of their emotions and their feelings. So we should avoid those people. That is what we're taught in society.
Yeah.
That is what we're conditioned to believe at home, that anger is a bad feeling to have and it should be avoided at all costs. And if we are given the opportunity to admit it, we shouldn't out of fear that we will be judged unfairly. So anger is the most ignored and the most frequently denied feeling,
So
but it
you just
lays at
said
the
something.
very root of every problem.
You just said something. You said that anger is the most denied
Yes.
emotion.
Yes.
And because, like you said, people are like, oh, you're angry. We can't do this. We can't talk. Right.
Yeah.
But, oh, goodness. What am I trying to say? So anger is the most denied feeling. Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
So doesn't that make it a little hard sometimes to do self-evaluation and really pull
Hmm.
yourself out of those situations? What would you suggest
Hmm.
for
So
that?
it makes it very difficult to pull ourselves out of situations when we're ignoring the very signal that's telling us something needs to change. And that's so when we ignore anger, even at its lowest level, we are ignoring the opportunity to make the needed change. And so if we're doing self evaluation and we're saying, well, I can't talk about anger and I'm not going to admit that I'm angry and really I need to pretend like I'm in control, then what we have really done is started to diminish our value. We've started the process of bringing our worth down in the relationship, our worth down to ourselves. When do we deny anger? We're basically saying to ourselves, I don't matter. I'm not important. And so that happens on a subconscious level. And then we start to feel saddened because we've said to anger, no. And anger is saying, listen, I'm trying to tell you something to keep you safe and the other person safe. I'm trying to show you where your value isn't being acknowledged, where your value is being put down. So when we say no to anger, we say no to our worth and our value.
Um, you know, I did this again and I forgot. So I want to let everyone who's watching know, and I will get this, you guys. Please, if you have questions as we're moving along, please feel free to type those questions in and we will answer those questions for you. Okay. So if you have
Mhm.
questions, please feel free. This is a conversation and we want you to be a part of this conversation and get questions answered that you may have. Okay. So I put up here that anger is a sign that change is needed, whether personal, relational, or environmental.
Mhm.
So what I hear you saying is that um, each time we ignore anger, that's like ignoring our brain telling us we're hungry, right? And then
Yep.
we're just hungry. We're just sitting there hungry and we're not doing what we need to do to care for ourselves, right? So
Mhm.
acknowledging that you're upset is actually healthy, right? And it's a way to begin to barrel through and peel away at some of those
Mhm.
layers of things that might
Mhm.
be um,
Mhm.
causing that anger, because if you can't
Mhm.
acknowledge it, you can't necessarily address it, right?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
what I'm getting from that.
So there might be lots of reasons why a person might deny anger. And it could be they've personally invested in the relationship, in the business, in that environment. They've made such a deep, they planted so deeply in that environment that the anger is sort of split, meaning I'm I'm experiencing anger about what's happening, but I'm conflicted about changing it or leaving it because I put so much into it. And so, on one hand, I'm going to say, I'm going to pretend like it doesn't exist, hoping things change or just go away. But while on the other hand, things aren't changing, and as a matter of fact, they may be worsening, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to look at the second cue, which is the behavioral cue. So now behavioral cues are things like I'm tightening up my jaws, I'm grinding my teeth in the context maybe conflict, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
actual outside of you or internally in your mind and your imagination. I'm tightening up my neck. I'm clenching over. I'm hunching over, and every time I start imagining something, um, I'm pacing. Maybe some people pace. Maybe I just resort to eating something sweet or sugary or fatty or salty. Maybe I turn over to a regular habitual thing that I do that allows me to self-soothe, but that thing isn't necessarily the healthiest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe sometimes I'll just get argumentative or critical or nitpicky. There are all kinds of behavioral cues that a person may exhibit, and this goes back to that original question about paying attention to
Mm-hmm.
someone else so that you can recognize them early signs, so
Right.
that you know what to do. So when you start seeing these things in this context, it's a conflicted thing. It's something where there has been some past issues or differences of opinion that have escalated to maybe some verbal slights, or I walk away thinking that I don't want to deal with this. I'm kind of tired of it. Something like that. So these behavioral cues can also be revenge, like sarcasm, saying sarcastic things,
My second,
uh,
which sometimes.
mm, jokes, joking at the other person's expense, hiding things from people, doing things on the backhand side that they don't know you did, but you just get the joy and the satisfaction out of knowing that they suffered because you did it. Um, it could be overt things like putting a person down in a group of people, humiliating them, right? Embarrassing them. It could be offhanded compliments that sound like you're saying a good thing, but really on the other side of it, you're really just slamming the person,
Right.
right? So
So
there are all these kinds of ways.
let me ask you this. So we're talking about
Mhm.
the behavioral cues because I believe, um, oh yeah, and being impatient. Oh yeah, being
Uh-huh.
impatient is definitely a cue, and it's actually one of those subtle cues that people think, oh, maybe they're just a little irritated right now, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's really probably one that you should pay attention to because it's one of those
Mm-hmm.
that actually can begin to roll out of control a lot faster than some of the other behaviors that
Uh-huh.
you may see. Now,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm getting out of this is recognizing those behaviors actually gives you an opportunity to remove yourself from the situation. Rather, you're recognizing those behaviors in yourself, or rather, you're recognizing it in the person that you're around, or rather, you're recognizing it in that environment. Let's say a work environment that's not healthy and you're very disgruntled and angry all the time. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's a cue that you need to move on, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we have to pay attention to, I love the physical cues, right? Because I know when I'm becoming upset, like you said, your heart starts to pound, you feel like you can't breathe, you clench your hands, and those are amazing cues to pay attention to, right? But it's the
Mm-hmm.
behavioral ones that become extremely important because those are the real signs that you need to relieve yourself from that
Mm-hmm.
current situation that you are in. How am
Mm-hmm.
I on that? Yeah.
Well, you are right on the money on that. And the behavioral cues are the most destructive
Yes, they're the most dangerous.
because now you're doing things and you're allowing things to be done to you that can be damaging to your self-esteem, that can be damaging to your mental outlook on life, that can be damaging to your health, that can be damaging to your finances, your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
These are the destructive things that erode, that significantly erode the trust in that relationship.
Not only trust in the person, but trust in yourself that you're able to
Yeah.
actually gauge what's going on, right? So I want to talk
Yeah.
about behave. I want to talk about uh, you mentioned how anger is an emotion, right?
Hmm.
And it is a receptor. So I want to talk about anger being a pain receptor.
Hmm.
I want to talk.
Okay. So think of anger as if you like. Here's the analogy. Someone takes a pin and they prick you with it, and you feel this sharp pain, and you go, "Ow, that hurt." Now that's physical pain because of something physical, something was did to you. Now, anger it's a feeling and it's an emotional state. And when something is happening in your environment that's painful to you, anger is the first sign of emotional pain. It's the shock that says something is wrong, something is not right. But again, we get right to this point where we ignore it. We dismiss it and we say it's something else. We tell ourselves it's something else. And sometimes we're not even associating anger with what's really happening because we are not conscious. We are not connecting the real thing that's happening to us and the anger that's the signal that's signaling we're experiencing pain. We're sort of, and it could be denial, it could be ignoring, it could be any number of things. It could just simply be ignorance. I'm just not even aware that this is painful to me. It's like being caught in a bear trap and it's gnawing your leg off, and you're grabbing at the free leg and saying that's the leg that's in pain, while the leg that you're about to lose is bleeding and shredded. And so
Right.
I'm saying it like that. I'm saying it like that because for some of us it's really like that, and we stay in the bear trap. We stay hooked in and locked into the bear trap, thinking, and sometimes we just get adjusted to the bear trap and we think this is safe. I'm in a good relationship. And some of us don't even realize that we're on the verge of inwardly, maybe some part of us is dying. And that happens to a lot of us. Some parts of us actually just expire.
Would you
Creativity,
would you say
ingenuity.
would you say is that's where we get stuck? We get stuck there, and that's where some people get stuck in anger mode, right? And that's the only way they know how to operate because it's safe. It's safe. It keeps people at a distance. If people
Mhm,
think that I'm not approachable, then I can't be hurt and I can't be triggered anymore. And I'm okay
mhm,
with that and I'm comfortable with that. But really, you're not comfortable with that because many times people will say, well, that's not me and I don't want to be like this, but I don't know how to change and get out of that. And I hear you saying in order to do that, you have to acknowledge that it's there, that you're having an emotion that is uncomfortable, but it is an emotion that needs to be acknowledged for you to be able to move on.
Where's this pain coming from?
Right.
Stop and take stock. Where is this pain coming from? Why is this pain happening? What am I going to do about this pain? And then connecting, because I may have some subconscious, I may be exhibiting subconscious behavioral cues. I might be acting out, and it could be a really good relationship. It could be a super positive situation, but something else is bothering me. Something else I'm experiencing anger over. It's like the bear trap analogy. I'm sabotaging this good relationship, this positive situation. I'm tearing that down because I'm reacting to something that's happening in another place or maybe somewhere back in my past. I'm
Listen,
now I'm now being triggered and I'm destroying my mate. I'm destroying my household. I'm
listen.
destroying my health.
Listen, so now we want to go ahead and talk about how do I know when I'm being triggered, right? Some people are just like,
Okay.
this is me.
Right.
It is what it is, right? Take it or leave it.
Right. Sometimes we think sassy behavior is me. Like
Right.
I've adopted the sassy behavior. I've adopted this critical analytical mindset. I've
Mhm.
adopted these I've adopted these fixed personality traits and said that they're me, and I've lost fluidity and flexibility to adjust to different situations and different people. I'm like this. I'm always the same personality type wherever I go, and people find it uncomfortable, and sometimes they find it irritating. I just can't seem to adjust or tone it down. I'm always at 9 wherever I go. I'm always at level 9 and drawing attention. And so we've adopted this. It's a mask. It's really just a mask. It's a persona that we've created to hide what's really going on. And I might truly be a broken person on the inside. I
So
might go ahead.
so what I want for our our community who's watching us right now
Mhm.
is to understand, how do they know when that's happened? Do they feel something? Is there an emotion that occurs? Is it like something that if they can see it and feel it, they can just back out because they can
Mhm.
acknowledge it, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
I am just a firm believer, if you can put a name to it and you can make it tangible, you can take your power back from it and you can hold
Mhm.
on to, you can get through it, right? But some
Yeah.
people don't realize that their behavior is because they've been triggered. So when you're looking
Yeah.
at this, how do you help people realize that?
Well, there are a couple of things that come to mind on that. If I've invested my energy in propping this fake self up, this fabricated personality that I think is the life of the party, if anyone challenges me on it, then I'm going to interpret that as saying, you're asking me to be less than who I am. You're attacking me. You're trying to tell me I'm not enough and I'm not good enough. But what people really are saying is, hey, um, your personality is offensive and it's hurting people. And so one of those signs is people pull away from you. They actually start to cut you off and isolate you. So that's one kind of sign that something's kind of not right. The
Mm-hmm.
other is the other is if I'm finding it increasingly difficult to make things work in my life, to form long-term, healthy, lasting relationships. I seem to just have a string of hit and misses. I seem to always attract the same kind of person. I
Mm-hmm.
seem to always experience pain and hurt and rejection and abandonment and isolation. Those are those are real big signs that maybe it's not the other person, maybe it's me.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do I make that change? Well, some people just have to hit rock bottom. It's like an addiction. I'm addicted to this personality so much so that I have to literally hit the bottom and the pavement and lose everything before I will even recognize that I need to change. And you know how addictions are.
Right.
Some people hit rock bottom and they go in, and they recover. They go into recovery. Some people hit rock bottom and they never get back up.
Right. So this is kind of what I want to look at in regards to we're talking about triggers, but let's go ahead and look at unknown triggers.
Hmm.
Some people are
Hmm.
like, "Oh, what does that mean? What does it mean to have an unknown?" And when I talk about trigger, I'm
Hmm.
talking about something that occurs that causes you to reach a level of anger, right? You are
Hmm.
just, something happened, somebody said something, somebody did something, and all of a sudden you are dysregulated, right? I
Hmm.
want to talk in that aspect of, I want to say it's an intrusion of the trauma that occurred, right?
Hmm.
Um, and the perception of danger. right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
perception
Mm-hmm.
of danger. It's an intrusion of the trauma that occurred, rather whatever it is. Let's say you grew up and as a child, because we just know we were always told children are seen or not heard. You couldn't halfway complete a sentence before you were told
Mm-hmm.
you have a big mouth or something else like that, right? And so when you're
Mm-hmm.
you're you're when you're when you're moving forward through your developmental stages and you end up in friendships, relationships, social situations, and you're talking, and all of a sudden somebody is like cutting you off or not even halfway listening to what you're saying, and you become upset or you become uneasy, that is an aspect of a trauma memory or a trauma intrusion. And
Mm-hmm.
now you're feeling like you did whenever that trauma may have happened,
Mm-hmm.
and now you're upset, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. So what we want. So we talked about physical cues. We talked about behavioral cues. So now
Mm-hmm.
this is a good place to talk about emotional cues.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we look at emotional cues in relation to the question of known and unknown triggers. So
Mm-hmm.
emotional cues are simply this. They are the emotional states I find myself in as a result of the thoughts and the beliefs that run through my head when I've been triggered. So a trigger is an event, and an event could be the environment that you're in, made up of people, places. It could be colors. It could be scents. It could be anything that stirs up um, a deeply buried memory of some traumatic thing that has happened to you. Now, when traumas surface, they don't always come at you like the situation that occurred maybe in your
Correct.
childhood. What will come up will be the emotions
Yes.
that have saturated that memory. So if I can break this down a little bit, when we experience a trauma, that means our senses experience an overload. What I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, what I'm feeling, we experience a moment where something happens that causes us to be hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Just as simple as that. We become hurt. Now, what we interpret and how we interpret and tell ourselves that we've been hurt is based on what we've been told. And here's a perfect example. When a baby first, maybe they fall or maybe they prick their finger, they don't initially cry. What they do is they just kind of they look because they don't know how to react. But here's where we teach them how to react. Oh,
Yeah.
are you hurt? Are you hurt? Oh, and so when we go oh like that, then what's the next thing they do?
They cry.
They start to mimic exactly. Now what we've taught them to do is when you feel that, when you have that sensation, this is the emotional state you should be in. They have now hardwired their brain in that moment. But let's say now this is kind of incongruent, but if we see a baby fall or prick their finger on something and then they look up and then we go, huh, isn't that interesting? Oh, come here, give daddy a hug or give mommy a hug. Then they'll just go and give you a hug and then go back to play. So in that moment, instead of teaching them to cry, we've taught them that when something like that happens, seek comfort, seek love, seek affection. Now we haven't trained them to ignore pain.
No.
We've just because that's natural. We've just taught them that the response to pain is love, affection, and comfort.
Correct.
So I'm using that to just illustrate we condition and train ourselves how to respond. So to trauma and pain, we are conditioned and taught to become hostile,
And angry.
to become combative, to
Mhm.
go in and to take it personally and to push it outward onto the other person. But
Listen.
what if,
No.
but
Go
what if,
ahead, sir.
yeah, but what if in that moment that I notice that something has triggered me, instead of attacking the other person, I attacked the situation. I attack the dynamics.
Yes.
I attack the real issue going on here. And it might be we're going at each other because of financial issues. And now we're making it personal. You cheated on me. So now I'm going to fight with you about that. And I'm going to call you and tell you all kinds of this and you all kinds of that. Instead of just saying, hey, wait a minute. You cheated on me, regardless of what you're. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Regardless of it'll go away. All right.
Football.
So regardless of what you do, what you have done to me, I'm not staying here. You
Right.
just told me that I hold so little value to you that you went forward with an action that humiliated me and showed me that I don't have a significant place in your life. And it is a humiliation. Let's just say it, that's what it is. It is that. But how I respond to it, I don't have to punch you. I don't have to cuss at you. I just have to say, this and how I'm feeling inside about it is telling me, my body is telling me that it doesn't want to be here anymore. My emotions are telling me that they don't want to be here anymore. So I'm going to listen. I'm not going to be here anymore.
Hmm.
I know that sounds really hard. It sounds really
And
harsh
it's not
because
even.
shouldn't we?
Go ahead.
It's not. Shouldn't we give a person a chance? Maybe it was something we did that facilitated what they did. It's all those things are really about ignoring, denying, and minimizing that kind of violence. And I call it violence. Cheating is violence.
Okay, but I would say that this not only applies just to relationships. It applies to daily life because we could be sitting in traffic, like road rage is real, right? We could be
Yeah,
sitting in traffic and someone, I don't know, gets in front of you without a blinker, and how you handle it,
is
that's
based
a
on.
level of anger, right? So also
Mhm.
what I hear you saying is it has to be intentional. If you want to have a positive change, even after you become upset, you have to take intentional actions to pay attention to self and understand, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, what just happened doesn't require me to go from 0 to 60. Maybe I just
Mhm.
need to take a deep breath for a minute, recollect, and say, okay, you know what? I can walk out of this no harm, no foul, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
when it becomes to traumatic situations, we're not necessarily trained to do that. That's what I hear you saying. So, for instance,
For-
listen,
Mhm.
I always got a story about my son. So, anytime you come into this broadcast, something is always going to apply to this
Mhm.
child. Okay. Um,
Mhm.
but when he was younger, he used to touch the outside of the oven door, right?
Mhm.
And people like,
Mhm.
oh, no, no, no. I said, look, it's going to take him to get burned one time and he won't do it
Mm.
again. Right.
Mm.
But that is the receptors that show us that we need to pay attention to. Hey, something's going on, right? Something is happening. We need to address it and we need to acknowledge it in order to address it. I think I just said that like two different ways. But
So yeah. So you're onto it, and you're stating how we can take an experience and instead of instead of projecting the emotional content outward at someone else or internalizing it on the inside,
mhm,
what we can do is take that emotional content and doing a self-evaluation of our own character, our own choices, who we are in that moment and what we bring to that relationship. So we can take that experience and personalize it in a positive way,
mhm,
right? So what I mean by that is simply this. I can look at the beliefs that I have that I've held up until this moment and start to break those beliefs down.
mhm,
And I can start to take them apart, analyze them and take them apart and identify the ones that don't work.
right.
Most of us really just we don't evaluate our beliefs. They operate like computer programming, causing us to make all kinds of decisions and to do all kinds of things that keep us stuck. But
Mhm,
I have to get to those beliefs. and I have to identify them by looking at the situation. So going back, so you're right. It's not all about relationships, and yet relationships are some of the most meaningful and significant experiences that we'll have on this planet. I
Hmm.
mean, if you think about everything that we do, it involves a relationship, and it doesn't have to be intimate. It can
No.
also be platonic. It can also be professional. I mean, relationships cut across the board of experience, and everything that what we become, what we do, it has to do with how we handle and manage those relationships, and that part has to do with all the kinds of things that we have been told growing up and seen,
Hmm.
and the various kinds of beliefs that we have, whether they've been shaped by our culture, meaning our religion, our education, and our community, and our technology. So all of these things shape our belief system, and then those beliefs then determine and set the tone for what we're going to feel. So it's this structured, stratified event, then the trigger, the event is the trigger. Then I have all these beliefs and thoughts, and those
Hmm.
beliefs, those thoughts, then trigger or stir up or excite or create or form or make
Hmm.
feelings. And in those feelings, how I interpret them. Here's the important how I interpret those feelings, meaning the labels and the definitions and all these intricate things that I do with those feelings, they will create emotional states. And so that's how we get and answer the question, how are emotions formed? They're formed by the beliefs and thoughts that we have that have become a part of our experience. And then we got emotions
Hmm.
that are created and made up of various kinds of feelings. And anger, as I said, is a signal and a sign. It's the surface feeling, it's the pain receptor. But underneath that anger could be sadness, rejection, pride, remorse. It could be any of those other feelings that are the more subtle and the more quiet and the below surface feelings. But the anger is simply saying that all of these smaller feelings have reached a point where they can no longer be held beneath the surface. And that anger is saying that now something is starting to break through the surface like magma
I was getting
breaking
ready
through
to
the
say the
floor
same
of
thing. I
a
think we're
volcano.
on the same page. The
Hmm.
emotions are the pressure. The anger is the magma that's going to come out the top of the volcano.
Hmm.
And if we can address what's underneath, we can avoid
Hmm.
that explosion and
Hmm.
actually have positive experiences, even when they were meant to be negative, right?
What do you think about magma for a second? What does magma ultimately do? If it doesn't what it destroys, it also provides the fertile substance for things to grow in,
It sure
right?
does.
So magma is both a creative force
And a
and a
destructive force.
destructive force.
Yeah.
So the anger can allow us to have the courage to destroy things that are stagnant,
Ah, that is a good
and
way to look
then
at that.
and then break it apart, and now use that to fertilize to create the fertile ground to plant new seeds to grow new things.
So basically, anger could actually be used for good, meaning you get mad
Yes.
enough to make a change
Yeah.
that's for the positive, right?
Yes.
Whatever that situation is, if you've had enough and enough and enough, and you're
Hmm.
upset about it, and the difference is when you're angry about it and not trying to make a positive. When your reaction is negative, they call it anger, and when it's
Mm.
positive, they say you're just passionate.
Mm. Interesting.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
you have a passion, you have a fire. No, I'm mad, right?
Hmm.
Don't
Hmm.
don't 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 downsize my mad, because I am, and
No.
I'm
Hmm.
angry enough to make a change, right?
It's
I'm
so
not
it's like
just
it's
being
right.
compassionate about it, right?
Yes.
Angry
Right.
enough to say I'm done and I want to feel better.
Hmm.
So it can't, that's where it also comes into that anger is not always bad, right? It is how we react when you having
Hmm.
that emotion. It is an emotion where
Hmm.
you can act
Hmm.
negatively or you can act
Mm-hmm.
positively. And it actually has to be a conscious effort to
Mm-hmm.
actually bring it to the positive end, because
Right.
innately when you're angry, it's going far left. Let's just go
Mm-hmm.
ahead and be honest. It's not going to be positive. So we
Mm-hmm.
have to reach within ourselves, acknowledge our emotions, acknowledge I might actually be a bit sad here,
Mm-hmm.
in order to
Yes.
get our minds back on track to actually make it positive and have a positive outcome.
And simply just saying, I'm feeling irritated here. I'm
Right?
feeling frustrated here. I'm mad. I'm feeling rage right now. Sometimes just saying that, using those vocal cords, it gives the anger a pathway to express itself, right? It's amazing what the voice can do. When people sing and they sing beautifully and they're feeling deep emotion, you can feel the emotion
Yeah.
in a good song. It just washes over you. And so in the similar kind of way, just say it. I am. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm hurt. Then when we do that, the body starts to shift into it starts to trigger the relaxation response. Just
Yes.
admitting it and just owning it. You
Yes.
trigger the relaxation response, and you also do this significant thing. You've now released the anger, and now it starts to go through this it starts to transmute. It changes from destruction of a person or property or your own health to transforming your circumstances, changing and transforming your thinking. Think of anger as pure bottled up octane energy, fuel. And so when we bottle it up inside of all these experiences, that's the very energy that we need for transformation and change in life. That's the very fuel we need to go after our dreams, make our hopes a reality, transform ourselves, go back to school, maybe make our relation transform our relationship by having the strength and the courage to say, this isn't working. What can we do different? I
Right.
want this to work.
Right.
Sometimes we won't even say that, but let
Sometimes
me
we
make
won't say
let's
that.
make one distinction. We want to distinguish anger from how it's expressed. Now,
Yes.
anger, again, it's the feeling and it can have any number of emotional states. But when we start breaking things with our words and our hands, that's called behaving aggressive. That's called aggression. It's called
Hmm.
behaving aggressively. And
Hmm.
so we want to make it, a lot of people fail to make that distinction between behaviors and feelings. And so this is where the shame for anger comes in because we have merge those two things together, that anger is aggression in our thinking, and we
Hmm.
know that aggression is wrong and bad, breaking and destroying things is wrong and bad. That's why people won't talk about anger and the different levels of anger.
Hmm.
So once we separate behaviors and feelings, and we have the freedom, no, anger is not violence. Anger is
Right.
not aggression, right? If I'm saying I don't like this, and if I tell a person I'm really pissed right now that this is happening, and that person responds back to me, "Oh, you're being aggressive. You're no, you're." Then we have to be clear enough to say no.
Can I tell you? Let me tell you. That
Hmm.
is, that is, and just full disclosure, that is
Hmm.
a trigger for me.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, it's a trigger for a lot of people. You're
Wait,
being aggressive, right?
no, what? Wait a minute.
That
Like
just says I am not.
and then you become right. And then you become exactly what they just said. But I just have to tell you, like, if I say something to you, and then all of a sudden you're like,
Mhm.
you're being aggressive, and I'm just like, I'm pretty sure my
Yeah,
tone was normal, and
yeah,
then you do. But anyways, go ahead.
yeah. No, it's so true. There's a lot of people that just sends. So when you do lose it, then people say, "See,
See?
I told you. I told you." And then you walk away. Ah!
And then you mad because you got mad. Like there, honestly, that is a true situation where if you
Hmm.
I know that let me tell you, I know that is a trigger for me. So when somebody says it, I'm able to catch myself before I lose it, because I'm just like, okay, take a deep breath, because I know that wasn't my intent. Now, if it was my intent, go for it. Go ahead and say that that's what I am, because go ahead and tell the truth. Don't lie. But if I'm not, I've learned, okay, yeah, you just said that. And yeah, somewhere deep down inside that actually just hit a spot. So we can't talk right now. Right. And to me, that's my cue to walk away. Because if this conversation continues, I may very well become exactly what you just said. So let's go ahead and conclude our conversation, please.
And it's important to be wise. Some people use that to shut you down.
Yes, they do.
Some people will say, oh, you're being aggressive. And their intention isn't to calm the situation, to de-escalate, and to create an environment where we can talk openly. No, their aim is to shut you down and shut you up, and then to try to make and flip the situation on you so that you're the cause, you're the problem, when initially you were already on the right track to address the situation.
Right.
So that's where it's important for us to be clear about what aggression is. It's a set of behaviors. It's a specific set of behaviors. But expressing and talking about and saying that what I feel and how I feel is not being aggressive. It's being assertive, and it's being clear. Now, if we could sort of differentiate at this point and just talk about the different types of aggression. If I could just explain that.
If you want to, yes, sir. Sure.
And I'm going to weave it in to this question here. Anger doesn't equal bad. So this is how we're going to do it. Right? So anger doesn't equal bad. Let's destroy that belief. Let's break that right now and just say it out loud. Say it with me. Anger does not equal bad. It doesn't. It's what I do and how I express it determines whether it's good or not. Right? Let's take bad out of it. Good or not. Productive or not.
I love productive or not. I think it's like, is this situation going to be productive, or are you going to be positive or negative? Right? So it's like you have a choice. And I say that to say, it's like many times until you actually begin to pay attention to the emotions that are coming, you're like, no, I couldn't help my response. And in reality, that is true, because you've you're just responding how you know how to respond. But what I guess the purpose of this is, here's a tool for your healing box right here.
Right here.
You pay attention to self, pay attention to you, and then you will be able to control whether the anger is expressed in a negative way, or if you can get yourself regulated and turn it into a positive situation and a learning situation, and be able to remove yourself from that situation successfully. Now, also, I'm going to say this because I always have to do this. Sometimes, no matter how positive you are being with your anger, you are going to have a situation, counterpart, or other person who will continue to poke and make it a lot harder for you to be positive with the expression of how you are.
Okay.
And over time, you are able to better deal with that. So don't think I'm saying, hey, leave here tonight, and then that's what it is. No, I'm saying here is a tool for you to think about. Drop this in your little box. And every time you start feeling little spurts of, just think, okay, let me go ahead. How am I really feeling? And how do I want to express this? And do I want a positive outcome, or do I want a negative outcome, or do I want a productive outcome or unproductive outcome, just depending on how you want to say it.
Exactly. It's like, I'm going to tell you what I think, what I believe, what I want, what I need, and I'm going to be very clear about it. And here
Mhm.
is your opportunity to show me that you can hear what I said and show understanding. What
Mhm.
anger, when we use anger rightly, when we harness it rightly, we can then, it's telling us that the situation is right. We do the self evaluation. We look at our cues, our physical cues, our behavioral cues, our emotional cues. We evaluate the event, the environment, the person. We take stock of our thoughts, right?
Right.
That
And
even
with that, we
the
have a community member here who is saying
yes,
that they need to take a deep breath, take a time out, and come back to have a rational discussion. And
and
that
that's okay.
and that's okay. That's actually going to be more productive than actually letting loose on the negative end. So that is a perfect way to handle that situation. Even if you feel like you're
Yep.
being poked and prodded at, you at one point or another, as with practice, will be able to still just walk away,
Yeah.
right?
And
And
we don't
when you do
always want to walk away, do we?
no, we don't always. It takes strength to just because listen, we're
Mhm.
human. We are human above everything. And sometimes our instinct is to stay there and fight it out because you have made me mad and you need to hear everything that I have to say right now, right? But we have to be
Mhm.
careful talking in anger because some things may be said that
Can't take back.
you can't take back. Once it's out there, you can't take it back, and there
Mhm.
will be some regret and some damage to whatever the
Mhm.
situation is. It might
Mhm.
be break a professional relationship. It
Mhm.
might be a fallout with a family member. It might
Mhm.
whatever it is. So, yes, walking away, taking a time out, and coming to yourself, right? And then
Yep.
going back
Yep. Yep.
to address that.
Yep. So,
That's very
Nicole,
healthy.
that's perfect, and it's a very healthy perspective. I'm honoring me. I'm giving me the opportunity to love on me in this moment by saying, "Hey," rather than some hurtful words coming out of my mouth, I need to take a moment to step back and evaluate me. And I'm going to put this all in I statements.
Right.
I need to love on me. I need to take a walk. I need to take a bubble bath. I need to go to the gym. I need to go to the movies. I need to take a run. I need to journal. I need to do something right now that allows me to get my thoughts, to get my mind straight, to
Mhm.
get me straight before I can come to you and ask you to get something straight. I got to get me straight so that I can say it to you in a way that it doesn't offend you, it doesn't trigger you. Now, I'm not responsible for your feelings. I'm responsible for mine, but I need the space
Listen,
right now. Can you
listen,
honor that?
listen. This is what I tell people because people want to be upset and be angry. And this is what I tell you: put on your big girl, big boy panties and realize that you are not responsible for how people react to what you say, but you are
Mm-mm,
responsible for what you say. As
exactly.
people, people, you are not responsible for uh, how do
I
I
am
want
not
to say this?
responsible for somebody else's feelings
Yeah, you
or
can
their
only,
choices.
right, other people's feelings or choices. You can only manage your own, right? You
Yep.
can only manage
Yep.
you. So when you
Hmm.
say, "Oh, I'm doing this because," no, 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 I need for you to stop just one moment. Because
Hmm.
yes, that person just did something, but they
Hmm.
can't control how you respond to that something. That is purely you. That is purely self. And if we can realize that, then we are doing better
Hmm.
with being able to have positive to manage our anger and have
Hmm.
positive changes thereafter. And again, it takes
Hmm.
practice because
Yeah.
we have been taught how to respond, and trauma has helped us perceive things the way we remember them, right? So here's an example,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
If you were to walk in a garage in the middle of the night and you have never experienced or ever heard of anybody being harmed walking in a parking garage in the middle of the night, you are going to happily walk to your car on your lonesome without any. help, right?
Yeah.
However, if you've heard that people have been attacked in the garage and that it's better to walk with someone and not by yourself, you have now perceived that situation to be dangerous. And you
Mhm.
will always perceive that situation to be dangerous because of the things that have happened, right?
Mhm.
So it,
Mhm.
it is learned and it is instilled and ingrained into us to
Mhm.
look at things and perceive things in those certain ways. However,
Mhm.
it's not to say it can't be undone, right? We
Mhm.
just have to relearn and intentionally make adjustments to how we perceive the situations that we're in, which
Mhm.
in the end actually helps you express your anger again in an unproductive way or in a productive way.
Mhm. And so we're talking about trauma, and as you know in your profession, and lots of major studies have shown, trauma changes the way our brain functions.
Yes.
Trauma can Chronic trauma can actually keep your brain from growing in size, reaching its maximum width inside your skull. It can cause your brain to shrink. Trauma can change the color of your hair. Trauma can change the complexion of your skin. Trauma can change the density of your bones. Trauma, so when we're talking about trauma, we're saying is that all of these experiences, these painful things that are happening to us, are causing biochemical and hormonal reactions inside of our body.
Due
And
to
these hormones,
unwanted
all
information.
these chemicals are
Yeah.
literally transforming the size of our organs, the quality of our immune system, the way our brain is structured and operates. I mean, there have been tons of experiments that have been done on mice in relation to chronic trauma experiences. And we've all heard about the experiment of you've got mice in one cage, they've got things to play in, they've got things to run through, they've got things, lots of food to eat, and then you've got the mice in this other cage, it's just wires, and they're just in there. And then they watch what happens over time. The mice in this other pristine, playful environment, they live longer, they produce healthier children, they have healthier skin, healthier complexions. But the mice of the same age in the other cage, they're aged faster, they have fertility issues, they can't reproduce, they have all kinds of health related diseases, and they die early. So when we're looking at these two situations, we're talking about trauma, and then anger is the response to trauma. Trauma is simply something that's not fair, not right, unjust, right? And then there's our anger that's telling us that this situation is not right. And then there's the chemical change that's happening on the inside. We talked about those feelings. Well, those feelings equate to hormonal releases, which shift and alter blood pressure, heart rate, metabolic responses. All those feelings are the chemicals that are coming together and reacting. And then we've developed labels. This is sadness. This is this is rage. This is depression. And so we have these labels on these feelings, and then sitting right on top of that is the idea that this is not right. This is not fair. And that's the anger level. This isn't right. This isn't fair. And I'm reacting to this.
Right. And I'm going to react to this, right?
Like like what's happening in the public arena. It's the
Right now.
cage
Good
that
Lord.
doesn't have good food in it. That doesn't have green grass and friends to play with. It's that stark, barren mental cage that's being created by the media and by politics and by law enforcement. And now what we see, people are shaking the cage. They're shaking the
They're shaking the
cage.
cage to get out.
I'm
Okay.
not trying to politicize this discussion, but I'm just, you know.
Yes. I mean, it's a good reference of what's going on right now, right?
Hmm.
It's a truly good a good reference. So, my takeaway from tonight is, and I hope that our community can put into their healing box, is
Hmm.
that anger is not a bad thing to feel.
Mhm.
How you express it is the difference between positive change and unproductive outcomes. So
Mhm.
remember to self-evaluate. Hold on, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
You are right. Our community member, I'm sorry, uh,
Mhm.
stated that generational trauma is real. And it is.
That's alluding to.
Yes, generational trauma is real. And it's passed down, right? And it becomes up eventually to the person who experienced it last before the
Mhm.
next generation to implement these tools right here to break that cycle for themselves
I
and
want
for
to change the system.
generations to follow.
I want to break the cage.
Right.
I want to get out of this.
And I want to change the narrative, right? Or I
And
want to
in
change
my
the
anger,
narrative. Right.
yes. Okay. Mhm.
Right. And I want to do things different, because if I can take care of my anger, then I'm not going to put that same trauma off on my child, and my child's not
Mhm.
going to put that same trauma off on his or her child, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's an intentional movement within
Strategy.
self, and yes, strategy, right?
A
It does take
strategy for change.
time. It does take time, right?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it's doable. And those who desire to do it usually says, but I don't know how, right? That's
Mhm.
why we're having this conversation tonight, because I want to help you know how. And I
Yeah.
hope after all is said and done tonight, you understand that you have the power, and you have to take back the power that's yours, right?
Mhm.
And begin to care for you and
Mhm.
say, I have choices, although sometimes it doesn't feel like that. And man, sometimes I already told you, sometimes when people be like, you're aggressive, sometimes I have to work hard
Mm.
to rein it in, right?
Yeah.
That's reality. Again,
Yeah.
we are human first. And I think it's because I don't consider myself an aggressive person, right? And
Mhm.
so when you hear that about yourself, then you're just like, okay, yeah, well, let's go. No, but
Mhm.
anyways, understanding that we are
Mhm.
in control of the outcomes when we are in situations that are making us angry,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And not to negate the fact that we, in this current moment, feel like, okay, yeah, we're angry, but how do we change this narrative? Right? So, and I
How do
do
we
that,
harness the anger?
and I do feel that, right?
Mhm.
But you do have some people who are turning their anger and expressing it in a very positive way, even with what's going on right now. And we do have those who are expressing their anger in an unproductive way. So if we
Mhm.
look at what's going on around us, we have pure examples of what expression in an unproductive way causes, and what expression in a positive and productive way causes. It's
Mhm.
like be it's right before us,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So just look around us. You have physical examples of exactly what we're talking about tonight.
Mhm.
But foremost and above all, we have to go back to self, because
Mhm.
we are responsible for our reactions. We're not responsible for the things that are going on, and we're not responsible for the things that people are doing, but we sure are responsible for the way that we respond and react.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have to have self accountability. We have to stop denying anger. If you're angry, say you're angry. That's okay. It is an
Mhm.
emotion. It's not a crime. And actually, it's going to be better for you and everybody else around you for you just to say it out loud, because
Mhm.
then your brain is triggering, okay, I'm angry. What do I do next?
Mhm.
Whereas when you swallow anger, there is no processing.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the next thing that happens, When you say you weren't really responsible for it, I believe it, because it was just a reaction and there was no thought behind it. Right?
And nothing changes.
And nothing changes. So managing your anger for positive change starts with self. And I'm going to leave you guys with that. Floyd, my friend, I so appreciate you.
Thank you.
And
I
I so
appreciate
thank
the
you.
opportunity.
If you guys are in the need of services that are provided by Pace Family Services, Floyd, can you tell us one more time what it is, for those who may not have been on at the beginning? Let them know the services that you offer.
We provide parenting, anger management, co-parenting, and exchanges. PACE, PACE. And we're located in Fair Oaks. We also offer virtual classes. So if you live in Charlotte, North Carolina, or you live in Texas, or you live in Alaska, you can do a virtual class with us. We also have on-site classes where you can come on down and join a group, and we can talk about how anger is a positive, transforming energy that can be used to create
Yes.
massive change.
It can be a positive energy, and nobody will probably ever say that again, because that's not how we're taught to look at anger. But you can have a positive change, and I am excited about that. I am so excited about that. So you guys, thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
for
you
tuning
for the
in to
opportunity.
episode 2 of Mental Health and Healing. Floyd, again, thank you so very much for coming on
Thank
here
you. I
and
appreciate it.
participating in this much needed conversation. For those of you who are following this broadcast, in 2 weeks, that's 2 weeks, and we do this every 2 weeks, we are going to have faith-based yoga, and we're going to talk about healing and trauma recovery through managing your body. So I'm excited about that. Please look out for the flyer. Please look out for the invite to the event. But other than that, I love all of you. Thank you for participating, and thank you for tuning in. And remember, all I want to do is make sure that you have tools to place into your healing box for when you're ready. You guys have a good evening.